this is Christina Feliciano. I have just started this podcast, Feliciano and Friends. I'm pretty excited about it, and I have Izzy, who is my friend, and she is also my colleague and office manager and at the Alpha Clinic, and she's helping me with the podcast. And for this introduction, she's going to ask me some questions to just kind of get the ball rolling.
I know that you made a list of 10 things for your goals for 2025. What are you most excited about on that list? How are you feeling about that?
Okay, so what I did in early 2025 was I wrote a list of 10 goals. And I'm assuming that a lot of people watching this podcast are listening to it or listening because they do know me, but I know that maybe some of you guys haven't. So I'm going to go through my 10 goals of 2025, and I think when I go through them, it will give a little bit of history about me. So those that don't know me can get to know me, and those that do know me maybe can get to know me a little better. So my first goal was to get closer to Jesus and God. I say that I'm a follower of Jesus. I sometimes hesitate to talk about my Christian beliefs too much because I am not a good example at all. If you're tuning into this podcast to get like conservative Christian Baptist teachings, it's not me. But I do believe in Jesus. I try to be a follower of Jesus. I am not at all like stereotypically conservative Christian, but it is very important to me. I was incarcerated for 18 months. I read the whole Bible when I was incarcerated. I grew up as believing in Jesus. So it is something that's really important to me and personally, and I try to share it with others, but I always tell people, hey, like, don't follow me, follow Jesus, scripture. So it's something that's important, but again, it's something that I don't push on other people, but I do share. And for me, it has changed my life, and I believe why I'm still here. My second goal for 2025 was to reconcile with my family and reunite with my children, Max, Marco, and Leo. I have 3 children. My oldest son, Max, will be 16 this summer. Marco will be 12. My baby Leo will be 10. Their father died a little over 7 years ago, unexpectedly. And I subsequently lost custody of my 3 children, and they are up in Connecticut with their dad's family. And that has been like a difficult for me. At the same time, I really want to reconcile with my family. So what you're not going to get on this podcast is me talking a lot about my kid's dad's family or my family, because at the end of the day, family is always number one. Blood is thicker than water. I love my children. I love my family. I love Milton's family. I want us all to reconcile, all to come together for Max, Marco, and Leo, and that is my goal. So you're not going to get fun family tea on this podcast. But hopefully in a couple years, maybe Max will be on here, or Marco, Leo in the future with the Feliciano and Friends. So that's a goal. But that is a goal that I have personally, is just, for the family to reconcile and get back in my kid's life. Number 3, I have stay alcohol, drug free and help others in recovery. So I've been on a journey of sobriety. It hasn't been quite an overnight thing, but when I did get incarcerated back in 2018, I, overnight I was forced to get off all prescription drugs. And then since then, I've made a conscious decision to try to refrain from drugs and alcohol. I just don't think, for me, I have addiction in my family, in my blood. It's just hard for me to control it when I start. So I think that it's something for me that I really want to refrain from. When I was in jail, I did feel like God spoke to me, and kind of like this still small voice that said, if I really change my life around, that I'm going to get back everything that I've lost and more. And I made a ton of mistakes in my life. I've done a lot of things that I regret, but I really have felt that so strongly that I believe that there's a reason I'm here, and I'm really trying the best I can. I fall short, but I'm trying to stay on the straight and narrow and trying to help others to do that as well, because it is hard. It's a lot easier. The wide road is easier, but the straight and narrow, I do think over time, reaps benefits, and I want to be a good example for my kids and future grandchildren. Number 4, it's be real, authentic, and share more of my story publicly, which is part of what I'm doing on this podcast. That being said, for authenticity, I think it's a fine line, because my authentic self is not always very good. So I am trying to be a better person. I'm trying to evolve. I want for this podcast to be laughter and inspiring, learning from others. I'm going to have a lot of professionals on here and also friends on here, business people, lawyers, physicians, just everyday friends and family on. I think we can learn from everybody. So I want to be authentic at the same time. I don't always, sometimes people are like, this is the real me, but the real me is pretty shitty and not good. And that's sometimes me. The real me is not always very pretty. And that's not necessarily what I want to do on this podcast, because I want to be my authentic self, but I want to evolve and become a better person as well. So authenticity, but also being self-aware and trying to be the best version of myself. And also to share more of my story publicly, which I'm slowly doing. I think there is a fine line between oversharing, but I do also think there's things I've gone through that I'm not, that people think, maybe have gone through, that think that they're the only ones and they haven't. So I do want to share more of my stories publicly, so people just don't feel so alone and isolated. Because I do think when it comes to mental health, when it comes to suicide, when it comes to a lot of times like drugs to make people feel not so much emotional pain, it's because of this deep sense of loneliness. And when people have community, when they feel like they're not alone and they're not isolated, they do better. And I've always said, like, we're only as sick as our secret. So I do think there is something to sharing and letting others know that they're not alone. The next thing is to be a better friend, family member, boss, and provider. I always want to be a better friend, be a better family member, be a better sister, daughter, cousin-in-law, cousin, mother. So that's always a goal, to be the best nurse practitioner I can be. I haven't talked about that yet, but I am a board certified nurse practitioner, graduate of University of Florida, also studied at Oxford for a year, and also have a bachelor's in biology and also a bachelor's in nursing. So I am a nurse practitioner. That is something really dear to my heart, and I always want to be the best that I can for my patients. So that is part of my journey as well. Number 6, continue therapy and heal and be happy and forgive myself and others. So I, like I said, believe in scripture and God, and it talks about that all things, that God can turn all things towards good. So back after my incarceration, I'm in court ordered to see a therapist, and so she was like for the opposition, but she ended up being my number one advocate when I was going through some custody battles. And even when she stopped being court ordered, I have still seen her for the last 5 years, and I try to go weekly. And for me, it's really helpful because not all my friends and families want to hear all my problems, and I'm sure you guys on the podcast don't want to hear all my problems, but it is good to have a sounding board of someone that is a professional. So for me, it's something I'm going to continue. I advise. I know it's not always cheap. If you can afford it and you can get a good one, go see a therapist. Although a lot of my friends are doing the chat GTP therapy and saying that that's amazing too, so I might try to check that out as well. Number 7, become more involved in women's jail and prison ministry. I was incarcerated in Florida for 18 months. I was incarcerated very briefly in Connecticut, and then I was also incarcerated for a month and a half in North Dakota. So I have been incarcerated in 3 states. I have no charges, no convictions, but I was incarcerated in 3 states. I had, it was a tough time. I was pretty fortunate in that my incarceration experience, I wasn't pretty tough girl. I was not bullied. I didn't have a bad experience in that way, but it was horrific in that you lose your freedom and you're shackled, and that was not a fun experience for me to have that loss of freedom. I also saw some pretty effed up horrific things while I was incarcerated. So, I've gone through that, and I know how alone you can feel, and when you're incarcerated, how people really can turn their backs on you and judge you, even if some people are guilty, but sometimes people are not guilty, and it's a very lonely, isolating place. Also for myself, when I was there, I ended up losing all my finances, my home, my car, just because I wasn't working. You couldn't keep it all going. So I'm very sympathetic to people that are in jail. I also know people that are now in prison that I believe are wrongfully in prison. Not to say that there are people that deserve to be there, but my personal experience, I've had a lot of friends that have been incarcerated or are currently incarcerated, and I would like to continue to do ministry there. And I also, at some point in the podcast, have interest in maybe getting some of those stories out for the public to know, because it is kind of like an underworld that people aren't aware of. We're all human beings, and there's a lot of human beings. And then also on the outside, people that have loved ones that are incarcerated that don't really talk about. So this is something that is dear to my heart, and something that I would like to just, talk more about and just bring more light about. Number 8, I have stay connected to nature, visit the beach and country frequently. So the healthcare provider in me and the mental health problem person in my brain, I'm always trying to figure out ways that I can help my mental health without drugs and alcohol. So for me, I have found that really helps with yoga, Pilates, nature walks, being in the country. So I try to make sure that I'm really cognizant and that I do nature walks in country and do all of that. So it's something that I just need for my mental health because I love drugs and alcohol. It makes me feel really, really great, but it's not good for my loved ones around me. So I try to do positive things, get outside, and that's something that it's all my goal to continue to do, hopefully for the rest of my life, Lord willing. Number 9, it's write a book, create an app, and start a podcast. So here we are with the podcast because it is one of my goals for 2025, and hopefully I'll do a book and app because it's on my goal list. And I believe that part of the way that we get forward in life is by basically manifesting and having visions, but it's also that the vision ends up pulling us. So this is part of the reason I write down goals and then I remember every day. I look at my goals every day and it kind of pulls me. And then number 10, it's just to 10x our business and become a leader who inspires, encourages, and helps bring out the best in others. So I also am a business partner in a business here in Jacksonville, Florida called the Alpha Clinic. Our motto is underdog to alpha, and we help with different body transformations and men in testosterone. And, I really love all of our patients, and I believe that we've done a lot of good in the community. And my goal is to continue to build the Alpha Clinic. I don't know how much of the podcast, I think it will be part of the podcast in that being a nurse practitioner and being the owner of Alpha, I have a ton of interest in just wellness and health topics. So I do plan to bring different physicians on and nurse practitioners and providers to talk about health related topics. So that's exciting. So for those that don't know me, those are my 10 goals for 2025. And those that know me, those are my 10 goals for 2025. And I'm really excited that you guys are listening or watching. And I thank you guys so much for supporting my journey and for all the kind words. And we're going to have friends come on, so you don't be worried. You're not going to be bored of just listening to me all the time. I'm going to have guests on every single week. I will also do some talks where it's just me. And I'm just going to see what sticks. I always talk about, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but you can think of like a dartboard, right? And what I do is I just throw darts and there's going to be some bullseyes and some that don't land. So with this podcast, that's what I'm going to do is that I have a dartboard. I'm just going to throw a bunch of darts and hopefully some bullseyes. You guys let me know what you like, what you don't like, and then we'll hopefully bring that and hopefully we'll have some fun.